So welcome everybody. I'm going to get started. So my name is Marijke Vanderheel, and I welcome everybody to American Consumer Credit Counseling's Financial Harmony, Balancing Budgets Across Three Generations. So again, if you are new to our organization, we are actually a nonprofit credit counseling agency, and our main mission really is to give people the knowledge and the tools to really regain quality of their life. And so the financial education side are these webinars, and this is to kind of give you information so that you can make some informed choices. The other part of our organization, the counseling and debt management side, are one-to-one. And so we do offer free and confidential financial assessments. If in that financial assessment, that our debt management program might be a good fit for you, if you have a credit card or personal loan debt, then our organization would be able to assist you with that. We also do pre and post bankruptcy counseling. So we are nationally certified as pre and post bankruptcy counselors. So if bankruptcy and a fresh start is the best place for you, we are able to help you kind of walk down that path. And then finally, we are also certified as reverse mortgage counselors. So that's another specific piece as well. But if you're interested in anything about our organization, please feel free to check us out at www.consumercredit.com. If you do want to call and get a one-to-one assessment, if there's something that sparks in this presentation for you and you think, I'd really like to talk to somebody about my budget and my credit and where I am with my debt right now, please feel free to call us at 866-675-0990. And you will have a free and confidential credit and budget session with one of our credit counselors. So my name is Marijke Vanderheel. I'm the Community Outreach Supervisor here. So I am in charge of the financial education programming at ACCC. My partner here, Andy Della Santa, we worked together to create this presentation, and unfortunately he is sick today. So he was unable to attend with me, but I want to give a shout out to Andy and a shout out to our other colleague from JVS Boston, Adalberto, who really helped me put this presentation together. This was not done kind of in isolation. And so I really want to put a shout out to both Andy and Adalberto for all of their hard work to help me get to this point. So I hope we do it justice. But again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a certified financial educator. And so this is just a general financial education presentation. At the end of this presentation, what I'm going to share with you in the notes and then in the follow-up email as well are bunches of different resources and that you can use on your journey. Again, we are not experts in kind of some of the topics I'm going to be discussing. So we want to send you to places where you can get more assistance and more information. So that's where we are. And I also just want to, because Andy and Adalberto had developed this presentation with me, I just want to kind of thank again JVS Boston and all of their work that they do here in the Boston area. They are a workforce development agency, and so they really work with people to kind of find, if they're unemployed, to find a new job, and if they're employed, to kind of have some career advancement. And Andy is a financial coach within that organization, and so he does free financial coaching. So again, the reason why I left the slide here, and I just want to highlight this organization, is if you're in the Boston area, JVS Boston is a fantastic resource. If you're not in the Boston area, I would really highly recommend finding a career workforce development organization in your area or looking for some free financial coaching. Because again, these kinds of conversations and kind of getting some assistance is sometimes just really what we need to make that next step forward. So I just want to thank them for all their hard work. So today's agenda, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the sandwich generation, and this is the general term for multi-generational households. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why is this happening, what are the effects, and then what can you do? And the goal of the presentation is really to inform you, to support you, and to empower you. So we know that this topic is very personal, and we know that this topic is personal for you and for your family. And we just want to know that your family choices, whatever they might be, are respected. And how you choose to approach this really are your own. So we're going to walk into this with little judgment, but we also know that some of the things that we're going to be talking about are uncomfortable. And so we're going to be talking about kind of general norms that are going on. But we know that this can be a really challenging topic. So just we're going to walk into it with just kind of starting a conversation. So what is the sandwich generation? So the sandwich generation, this is the generation where it's adults somewhere between the ages of generally 30 to 60 who are supporting both their children and possibly their parents. And it could be support both emotional and financial. And so the Pew Research Foundation study found that 1 in 7 families, they're doing it aged 40 to 60, are providing care to both their children and to their parents. And when we're talking about children, we're talking about young children under the age of 18. And we're also talking about our adult children. So we're talking about children who may be in the home with us, kind of coming back to get support, or adult children outside the home who are still kind of needing some financial supports to really be successful. So that's the sandwich generation. So that's kind of, we're talking about people who are in this particular position. So why is this happening? What is this? What's been happening with this? What are the causes? So one of the causes that are people are having children later in life, and so instead of having children when they're younger and their parents are a little bit younger and kind of more independent, people are waiting and kind of focusing on careers and kind of other things and having children later in their life. And so they may have children under the age of 18 that they're financially responsible for when their parents are over 65 and maybe needing some financial support as well. So that's one of the factors that come into play. We love this. We're not saying this is a negative thing, but people are living longer. So people are, if people are retiring at 65, that the medical care that we have is much improved and the lifestyle that we have is improved and people are living longer. And so the retirement that they have in place, that they had in place from their jobs, might not be lasting quite as long as they had hoped. And also maybe medical costs are coming in, or just for everyone in general, life costs, the rising costs of housing and rental. And so these are some of the reasons as well. So again, cost of living has increased. So there's a lot of young people who are going out into the world and finding the cost of living, the rent and housing and kind of student loans, other responsibilities very high and not able to kind of manage them on their own and need some other assistance as well. So this is kind of why these three things are some of the pieces to why this is happening and why this is becoming more of a topic. So what are some of the negative effects of this multi-generational kind of emotional and financial support? So there is financial stress. So one of the things that is happening is that people are putting off retirement or, kind of helping kind of the money that they would be using in other ways is going to help their own family members. There is emotional stress. So when you are just have your children, you're kind of focused on your children, but if you have both children and your parents and yourself, that can cause some emotional stress. And also, if you're working full time, both you and your partner are working full time, then there can be a time management stress because there's more needs kind of going out there. So on average, people are spending $10,000 and 1,350 hours on their parents and children per year, in addition to their own kind of financial goals and their own needs. So this is something that these are some of the stresses that can come with multi-generational kind of households. Now, we also, on the counter, we always like to have a counterbalance here. There are also many positive effects of multi-generational living. So by having, more interactions and kind of between grandparents and children and kind of adult children helping to take care of grandparents, there are stronger family bonds and relationships. There can be more shared household chores and family care if your parents are able to kind of help mind your children and take care of those things. Those are kind of, it's a quid pro quo. It's kind of there's kind of a balancing piece there. And then there is that kind of peace of mind where that you're at young adult children and your parents are more financially stable if you're there able to kind of be a safety net with them. So there's that your peace of mind. So there are positive effects as well as being some of the negative effects. And this webinar is really going to really unpack more of the negative effects, but we do have to also balance that, many people find multi-generational living very fulfilling. We're just going to try to tackle some of the stressors and give you some of the tips to kind of manage that. So one of the biggest is actually the financial stress. So according to the New York Life's Wealth Watch poll, 90% of the sandwich generation, they are needing to make lifestyle change or different financial decisions because of these kinds of caregiving responsibilities. Some of the biggest is they need to cut back on their own expenses, their own personal expenses. They are contributing not as much to their own emergency savings, which is a concern, which is something that we're going to talk about. And they are taking on more debt, more credit card debt or other kinds of debt to be able to kind of cover some of their living costs. So those are some of the biggest things that are kind of the financial stressors. And then some adults are kind of postponing or consider postponing their own retirement. So instead of retiring at 65, they may be looking at 68 or 70 because they're looking at their own retirement funds and saying, I can't afford to retire at 65. So they're making those kinds of decisions. So that's one of the financial stressors. There's also a lot of emotional stress. And again, there is both a positive and a negative to being emotionally available here. On the one side, you are there for your parents and they were there for you when you're younger. And then you are there with your young adult children and still having that great relationship. For your parents, your aging parents, they may need more help with tasks. They may need help financially. They may need more emotional support. If there has been a loss of spouse and one of the partners is a surviving spouse, and that's a huge life change for them, there may be a lot more emotional needs there that weren't there before. And as they're aging, they may also need more help physically. It may be something that the mobility is changing, tasks and things that they could do normally around the house, they need more of that. So that could be something that is, again, your emotion, you have to kind of emotionally support some of those. For your adult children, the emotional support, again, wanting to make sure that they are successful in their lives and their careers and that they're happy and that they have everything that they need, as well as kind of if they need some financial support. So maybe maybe they're kind of on their own and they are relying on some financial support to cover student loan costs, to cover car loan costs, utilities, or various other things. Those kinds of expenses for somebody coming out of a home or coming out of a university setting can be very high if their wages aren't as high. And so that could be something they need some financial support. Some students, some young adults may be actually returning home to save some money. It might be something that they can't kind of manage everything on their own. And so they're coming back to kind of save some money to get some support. So it's a time management strain as well. So you have your caregiving, you have on top of that all of your own household tasks, and you have your own work commitments. So it's a 40+ hour week. And so can be something where you feel like you just don't have a time for yourself or for kind of just to breathe because there's so many things to do. And I really liked this quote from Suzanne Schmidt she's the head of financial wellness at New York Life, and they were the ones that did that poll. So this was her quote. She said, "If half of your time each week is going to caregiving, how are you able to prepare healthy meals, schedule appointments, proactively manage your investments, maintain personal relationships, get enough sleep, which is huge, feel focused and productive at work, and then plan for your own kind of secure financial future?" So these are all great questions in that sense of this is one of those pieces. This is where we feel this is one of the hidden strains of like a time management strain. We can't see this as much, but this can be an incredibly high emotional strain on us. And so this is something to think about as well. There's also a recognition of some caregiver burnout, where typically a lot of the caregiver responsibilities fell to women for both the time load for caregiving, sometimes for children as well as for aging parents, and emotional energy sometimes. I found this statistic very interesting, though, that the balance is shifted with the millennials. So in 2020, they reported that 64% of the population who were caregivers were female, and then 36% were male. So it was kind of 60-40, women to men, where just 3 years later in 2023, the balance is shifted to 45% of women are doing the primary caregiving, and 55% of men are doing the primary caregiving. So this is an interesting shift coming in with the millennials, as we're getting out of that kind of typical piece. But a lot of it can fall on women, and so this is part of we're going to talk about it later, about having conversations and bringing things to the table and sharing the load. So making sure you do that, whoever is the primary caregiver. So double income families may have more money, but then the other piece on this is there may be less flexible time. And many people are reporting that they need to reduce their hours because of family obligations, taking parents to doctor's appointments or kind of other responsibilities, turning down promotions. They're at a point in their life where maybe they could take on a promotion to do more, but because of that time strain, they may feel like they can't commit to more work time because their family commitments are a priority. And then some people might actually kind of crunch some of the numbers and really decide, I'm going to leave the workforce temporarily to be able to care for my family, and then come back at another time. So some of these pieces are just when we're thinking about caregiver burnout, just the emotional and physical support that we give, both for just our own household, but then to physically care for the young and elderly, shop, cook, clean, all of those different things can lead to a lot of burnout. So we're going to talk a little bit kind of under the solutions about kind of recognizing your signs of burnout and then what you can do to proactively take a hold of that. So what can you do? These are some of the steps that we're going to unpack in the next part of the series. Budget to prioritize your own spending. So have a look at your budget. And again, one of the big things that people are doing is cutting costs to be able to kind of reallocate their money to other places. You do need to protect your own future. So your own retirement and your own emergency savings need to be protected. So that needs to be a priority, just to make sure you're in an okay place. Probably one of the harder things to do is to find a way to sit down and really lay this out with the family and open lines of communication to be really clear about kind of responsibilities and expectations. And then the biggest thing is just trying to find assistance and support when you can. And again, what I have for you is at the end of this presentation, I have a document that I've collected all sorts of links to various places where you might be able to seek assistance for different pieces. So hopefully this will be, if I comment on anything in the next couple slides, there may be a link attached to it that you can use. So this is just, again, here at ACCC, we always talk to people about budgeting. That's when we do that free and confidential financial assessment, we always look at budgets. We pull the budget apart. And so this is an income flow. So this is a really good idea when you're sitting down and looking at your monthly total income, how do you begin to allocate this? So what you want to do is you want to prioritize your basic needs first. So your housing, this would be rent or mortgage and utilities, food, groceries that you would bring and make in the house. This could be also be, pet care, toiletries, various other things, house cleaning supplies, things that are basic needs within the house. Transportation, car loans, gas, insurance, and all those other things attached to cars. Medicine, prescriptions, medical care, and then if you have children, child care. So your children need to be taken care of so that you can work. So know your dollar amount. That's really important when we talk about building an emergency fund, is to know what's the dollar amount that you need each month to cover those basic costs. And if something were to happen, if there were to be a job change or job reduction, how much money do you have set aside in savings to be able to cover those costs? How long could you live? How many months could you live without that new income coming in? That's a really important question to know. The other piece is understand your debt payment plan. So you want to really know what you owe. So you want to know when when your payments are due, because you want to make sure that you are not late with any of your payments. And we want to keep our credit really healthy. We want to keep that in a good place, so we don't want any adverse information on our credit report. We also want to have a look at our debt payment plan to really understand interest rates. And we want to understand, if the interest rate is lower, we may just be budgeting to pay the minimum, like a mortgage or a car, something, or a student loan. Or if the interest is a high interest, like credit cards, then when do you pay more than the minimum to try to bring those balances down? So that's a whole nother separate webinar that we'll be dealing with in the beginning of January, which is a great topic, how to tackle your debt. So come back and join us in January for kind of a whole webinar on just that. The next piece is, and this is really, really important, this is your safety net. This is what are your savings plans for, again, that emergency fund? If things were to happen, how much of a safety net do you have in your emergency fund? Rainy day funds are funds where you put money aside for things like the holidays. Do you have a special holiday budget and a special holiday budget account that you put money aside into? So those are kinds of things that you want to think about. And then last but not least are all your little treats, all those things that are for you, all those that's eating outside the house, subscriptions and streaming services and other forms of entertainment, fashionable clothing, donations, and then personal care outside the house. So those are kind of in addition to everything. So as you are looking at, supporting your adult children or assisting your elderly parents, this is where this kind of all other expenses, this is where the money would be coming from. So you just want to make sure that you cover some of the top three, and that we look to see kind of how you can kind of cut back on some of these other expenses. So again,
Sorry, Marinka. I just wanted to go back. We have a question from Yolanda regarding why you put debt payment ahead of savings, and what is our definition of defining high interest versus low interest?
Perfect. So I always put debt savings before, or debt payment before savings. I think they go together. They're kind of, you make both together, but I think that you want to make sure on your debt that you have enough to cover the minimum on your debt so that you're able to make those payments and make sure that you don't have any adverse information on your credit. So setting up your debt payment goals and your savings goals kind of together, they're kind of in that slide. They went one after the other. You could switch savings and debt payment. I would say you probably could switch those two relatively easy. It's more of a preference. I think I just did debt payment first because it's just know what you owe first, because that then helps you then figure how much can you comfortably put aside into your savings. And when we're looking at low interest debt versus high interest debt, the higher the interest rate, the higher the interest charge is going to be. And so what we want to do is things like credit cards, we want to keep our debt relatively low because there's a part of that where we would need to be paying high credit card. Our part of our credit card payment would be the interest charges, and that would be quite high. So sometimes when we're looking at an installment loan that has a lower interest rate, that has a fixed payment amount, that would be something you would just make the minimum payment. So it's sometimes good to look at things within that perspective. So I hope that kind of helps explain kind of the high interest, low interest, kind of how you sort your debt. So when we're looking at protecting our future and our finances, we want to make sure that you have enough in your emergency fund to protect yourself today. So again, a lot of people, when I did the research on this, and when we're kind of talking to people about where they are with their savings, a lot of people, one of the things that stresses people out is they're kind of doing their monthly payments, their basic expenses, their debt payments, they're kind of doing all the things they need to cover, but people really aren't feeling comfortable with the amount of money that they're putting aside in savings. And that's a concern. So that's one of the pieces of just the recommendation would be to just do it consistently. Every paycheck, just put a certain amount of money aside into a separate savings account to just kind of like your 401k or your kind of employer retirement fund, they just put the money into the account and you don't even think about it. So try to build up an emergency fund just as a safety net. And then try to keep your credit card and personal loan debt lower because those, again, are the higher interest loans and credit. And so we want to keep them a little bit lower because, again, we want as much money in our pockets as we possibly can. And then in the resources section that I'm going to share with you, it's a PDF document with a lot of different links on it. I'm going to give you a lot of different tools where you can look to see about where you are with your retirement. So keep an eye on your retirement accounts and know kind of your target date for retirement. Again, it may shift. And a great place to go is My Social Security account. If you create a My Social Security account, it will tell you what your Social Security will look like based on different target retirement ages. So that's a lot of just get information just to kind of see where you are and kind of get a better picture. And then the other piece you really want to think about is, again, a lot of this feels like this is on us. And it's sometimes having these conversations are really challenging. So when we're looking at assistance, whether it's assistance with our old aging parents or whether it's our younger children, ask for help. Find a way to share the load. So really sit down and do a needs assessment. What needs to be done around the house? Groceries, cooking, cleaning, all those sorts of tasks and chores. What needs to be done? And then who can help with this? Who can help with some of these things? Rather than it just being on one person, how can these things be a shared load? What are your parents' current needs? And then begin to have conversations with your parents about future needs, about where they are, kind of what they would like moving forward and where they're comfortable with. If you start with some of the small things now, those harder conversations get easier later. And then what can you handle? What would you like to do? What do you want to be in charge of? And then who can assist? How can you delegate? How can you kind of give this to someone else? So communicate your needs within your own family, with your siblings, if you have siblings, with your parents, with your own children, and then really with supporters and anyone else in your life. And then this is where kind of looking out to other agencies that can really assist you with any benefits that may assist you or your family, financial coaches, career counselors, respite care assistant, help for parents. You kind of can't do a lot of the physical things for your parents anymore, kind of getting some assistance that way. Finding other support networks outside the house, that will be on the PDF document that I'm going to share with you as well. There's a couple that I researched and found. It's good to start those tough conversations a little bit earlier and really have conversations with your parents around kind of where they are. Because as we start to move forward, the conversations can become a little bit more challenging. You will want to know healthcare directives, both for your parents, maybe, and for yourself as well. And long-term care. What are some of the long-term care wishes or kind of what might be happening with that? Having a living will. So a living will is where you are designating your life-sustaining treatment choices. So if something happens, what your choices are before that event happens, it's very clear, and it just allows people in you and people in your life to be able to kind of make those decisions. Start to get some of the documents together and begin to keep kind of a record-keeping system. A last will and testament is different than a living will. So a living will is more about medical wishes, and a last will and testament are about your assets. So any assets that you might have, what would happen if you pass, and who would they go to? And so your will kind of designates that. And when the estate goes into probate, then it can be determined who steps in and who takes over. If you do not have a will, when your estate, when all of your assets go into probate, the court may decide that kind of information. So it's just something that's really good. Some people say, when should I get a will? And the piece would be, even if you're in your 30s and 40s and you have assets like retirement accounts or a home or kind of other kinds of asset, it's good to be able to kind of, for other people to know where you would like those to go. It's also really good for family members to have easy access to this information. So to have a financial assessment of your assets and of your debts, so that those records are kept someplace that they can access if they need. If you happen to go into the hospital and somebody needs to find something and you have it kind of in a system, it's much, much easier for them to find. And then the other piece, and this is I have one of the links in the resources that I'm going to share with you, is how to have hard conversations. And talking about death is hard. It is one of those conversations that people avoid. There was some statistic that I read that said people would rather have the sex education talk with their own kids than talk to their parents about kind of their last wishes. So it is a very kind of socially kind of uncomfortable topic. It can feel morbid. It can feel like we're money hungry if we're starting to ask about like, well, what do you want done with your assets, or how do you want this? There's kind of like an implied like, well, why? Why do you want to know? And there also is some cultural understanding that to talk about death in some cultures is to invite death in. So for some cultures, this is an incredibly difficult conversation to have, because there are ideas around they don't want that to happen, that will be something that might happen as well. So these are incredibly difficult conversations to have, but again, it's good to start thinking about them. So just an understanding of like what are your parents' wishes, and then when to seek some professional help with the estate planning, with online estate planning tools or an estate attorney to help kind of walk you through that. Very difficult conversations to have, but from someone who had a parent who has passed away, he had declining health and knew there something could happen, and sat down with all of us and kind of told us where everything was and what his wishes were and what he wanted done. And we cried and we were stressed and we didn't know what to say, but we sat and listened. And but when he did pass, we were dealing with our own grief from his passing, but we knew everything was all the logistic and all the other stuff was taken care of, so that wasn't a stress that we had to deal with. So I think that that's one of the pieces that it's hard if somebody's resistant to it, but it's a good topic to try to bring up. Having again some financial education and independence with your children, to really begin to get them in a place where they are financially confident to kind of make some decisions, and when they kind of move out on their own, they feel like they're in a good place. So here are some suggestions to kind of get some younger kids under 18 kind of some financial education. So for younger children, giving them chores and maybe an allowance attached to it. Again, it's helping with some of the tasks around the house. It's also giving them responsibility. You can set up a savings account for them. They wouldn't have access to it because they're a minor, but they could set savings goals and put money in the account and kind of begin to learn some of those financial pieces. For teens, one of the things that's really hard to balance: school, sports, after school activities, and their own social life. And some parents are hesitant to have kids earn money outside the house, to try to get a second job outside the house. But it is really good for them to do, whether it's just in the summertime or it's a couple hours a week during the school year. But it's a really great way for them to kind of learn responsibility young. When you open student accounts with teenagers, it's a joint account, so they will have access to those funds. And it's a great way for them to practice budgeting and goal setting. And they can start practicing with a debit card, because again, we're credit counselors, and so we work with people with credit, and so it's really good for people to practice staying within their budget by practicing with a debit card, and then when they're young adults they can practice with a credit card. So it's a great way to start. With young adults, we're having something that's called the boomerang generation. So these are adult children who have left the home, but then they've lived independently for a short period of time, and then they've returned home. It could be for economic reasons like low wages, low savings, high debt, unemployment, job changes. It could be they're coming back because something's happened within the family dynamic and you need some assistance. And the big thing with this is to really begin to set some really good boundaries and set some really clear expectations. What are the boundaries of, okay, how long are you going to stay? When are you going to fly from the nest? Because again, we don't want to necessarily always rescue kids from the challenge. We want to teach them how to face it. So having them kind of come back, regroup, and then kind of get ready to go back out again. Set the expectation. So when they're there, are they charged a reasonable rent? Are you taking that rent and putting it into a savings account for them so they can have it when they move out again? Are they contributing financially, or are they not contributing financially, but they're taking on more kind of household responsibilities? So again, it's another hard conversation to have with your adult children who may be living with you for a certain period of time, but it's really good to get those boundaries and those expectations kind of in place. We also have young adults who live away from the family, but they need continued financial assistance. Student loans, car payments, cell phone bills, they're the top three of sometimes why people need additional funds from family to help support them. Economic reasons, they're very the same, and personal reasons. Why do families continue to support adult children who are working full time outside the home? Well, we want our kids to live comfortably, and sometimes it's really hard to say no when they call and they don't have the money for their car payment. They don't have the money for the rent, and they call in a panic. Our knee-jerk reaction is to be like, okay, let me send this to you. I don't want you to be in that situation. So we want to set limits, and we want to kind of go back and kind of maybe teach some of the basics. So slowly kind of weaning from some of the support, giving them kind of like a timeline of like okay, I'm going to kind of help you with your car maintenance for this long, and then how are you going to kind of pick it up afterwards? Is it time to sell the car and kind of downsize? Kind of having those kinds of conversations. Promote accountability and change by setting conditions. So I will help you with this car payment if if you begin to put some money aside in savings. Like you can set like, I'm going to do this for you, but you need to do that. So make the kind of help with this conditional, showing some behaviors, some financial behaviors, to help them promote accountability. So again, we want to have them to model budgeting and spending, and we want them to build their credit safely. So kind of maybe if they're out and they're struggling, it's again, sometimes a difficult conversation to have, but a really good one. And then this is the part where we get to the burnout, that caregiver burnout, the time strain, the emotional strain, and the burnout. So prioritize your self-care. We always go back to that great visual of like when you get on the plane and if something happens and those air masks drop down, they tell you, you put on your mask first before you turn and help someone else. It's the same thing with this. So by taking care of yourself, by carving time out of your own very tight schedule for yourself, you will actually be able to kind of give more energy to others. Doing kind of a self-check of like your mental, emotional check of like where you are and kind of any financial stresses is super important. And also just like, again, the lines of communication, those lines of communication where the frustration that you might be feeling might need to be communicated so that there can be some change on another side. You can look for support networks outside the house. If you have elderly parents and the physical caregiving is getting to be a lot and you actually need someone, you're working a full-time job and you need some assistance, then respite care might be something that would be hugely beneficial for you. So again, kind of put your own oxygen mask on first when you're thinking about self-care. So the final thoughts today: prioritize budgeting for your own spending, protect your future and your savings goals. Try to keep your credit card debt a little bit lower because that's where some of the high interest charges go. Understand your estate planning options. So again, on the document that I'm going to share, there's a number of different websites that just kind of walk you through estate planning, a lot of language and terminology, some explanations, there's some great resources. But know your parents, but also know yourself. It's never too early to really start to learn about it and think about it for yourself. Have a plan to talk to your family. Because sit down, you're going to look at that resource that's How to Have Hard Conversations, and think about some of the things that are stressing you out and maybe frustrating you. What are your stresses and what are your frustrations? Sit down and kind of write those out, and then think about kind of how you can have the conversation and what your goals are for those conversations. And then last but not least, schedule some time for yourself. And there is a great little, it's called Happify, which is one of the apps that I found that kind of helps you kind of self-check yourself with your own kind of emotional and mental health. But again, this organization, my organization, American Consumer Credit Counseling, our main piece is really helping you manage your debt. So if you are someone who you're really feeling stuck with your credit card debt or your personal loan debt, our organization can work with you. Our goal is to get you debt-free in 3 to 5 years. We've got fantastic credit counselors out there who can really maybe be that first step in that financial support. So again, please feel free to check us out at consumercredit.com or give one of our counselors a call at 866-675-0990. Again, these are monthly webinar series, and our next webinar in December, we went nice and big with multi-generational family. Now we're going to go small. Now we're going to kind of go one person, one budget, and we're really going to unpack the there's a lot of flexibility in having only one budget as a single person, and there are a lot of challenges. So we're going to talk to you about strategies for single living in our December webinar, which is December 19th at 1 p.m. So you can scan the QR code here or check us out on our website, and you can sign up today if you would like.